Hello, so today we're going to be taking a look at painting lavender. This is suitable for beginners. We're going to use a few brushes all round. I've got a large, a medium and a detail brush. I've got my set of pan paints here, but if you use tubes then you can just as easily work with those. I've also got to hand my kitchen towel, my paper towel, and I have a piece of cling film here, which I'm going to use to give a little bit of texture to my background. So we're going to use the wet on wet method, and I'm going to start off by creating my background. So I've got some lovely clean water here. I've got two pots, one that I'm going to use for cleaning my brushes and the other one I'm going to use for my wet on wet technique. Try and keep that clean. I'm just going to pop a little square on, so I'm working on a fairly small scale. Don't worry if you leave some white gaps, it really doesn't matter, this will all fill in anyway. So I'll wet this area. I want my background to look like sort of lavender fading away. Get a little bit of distance into it. I'm just going to start off. I'm going to grab out of here some of my purple. I'm going to add a little bit of blue in and some red. I'm just going to actually mix up a couple of colours here. Add in a little bit more blue. A little more red. So I've got quite a dark purple here, and whilst this is on I'm actually going to pop in a little bit more colour on the top. Let's start in this top corner. I'm using quite a large brush. I want to keep this very loose. So across the top, and that's where I'm going to keep the depth of my colour. Now I'm going to pop in a little bit more red. I'm just going to put a few little bits on top. I've got a really bright pink here actually. And a bit more blue. If you need a little bit more water to keep it moving around, you can put that on. Spread that over. So I'm using my brush up and down now, exactly how the lavender would be. And now I'm going to tip my paper, roll it right the way down. So you can see we've got a really nice effect going now. And then I'm going to draw that along the bottom. I'm going to add in a little bit of green now too. So I've got a nice sap green. Just a little bit on the end of my brush. Doing a few lines. You want to be fairly quick with this because as it mixes with the purple, it will go browny. So you really just want to lay it on very quickly, right the way along the bottom. Now if I want to add some extra texture into this, this is where my cling film comes in. So while it's still wet, I can lay that over the top. Lift it up. And that's just taken some of these areas back a little bit, which I quite like. Got a quite large blob there, so I'm just going to move that around. So you can see that we've now got some really lovely pale areas and some darker. You can do this with a paper towel as well, but very often you will get the texture of the towel on it, so that's where the cling film works really well. Now we're going to let that dry off for a moment before we go in with our lavender. I'm just going to use this little bit over here just to show you the basics of one single piece of lavender before we put some groups onto here. So I'm now working with my medium brush. I've got a couple of different purples here. So I've got this slight darker one. And then I'm going to mix something a little bit lighter. It's just a phthalo blue here. I'm going to go in with a pink and a red. Let's grab a little bit of this. This is a cadmium. So spend a little bit of time mixing up your paint, get the right colour. And I want another one which is much pinker. Start off with my lovely bright red. And then I can add a bit of my purple into it. So that will give me a few different colours. So I'm loading up my brush. I'm actually going to use a technique, it's sort of a push down technique. So it's almost mark making rather than painting. I'm going to start with the top. I'm going to do the tiniest little bit of lavender. And then I'm going to push down my brush. And I'm alternating. And the harder I push, the larger the mark. So the further down I go. So it looks a little bit irregular at the moment. So let's pop in the next colour, just a slightly bluer one. I'm going to pop that over the top. So you want it to look natural. So obviously the harder I push down, the larger my marks are getting. I love the way that you get some areas that just don't fill at all. So here, I really like that. So this brush technique with the push is really useful for lots of different flowers. So it's one that you should definitely practice. I've got a nice dark one here. I'm going to fill in at the bottom. Just do a couple there. And also just towards where we will put in our stem, just going to pop a little bit of dark into there too. So you can see how simple that is. So let me grab some of my sap green again. Sticking with the same brush. Just in between, I'm going to start off. I'm going to put my stem in. And this is going to pick up some of that purple. So you don't really want a straight stem. That's why I've done it in bits. And afterwards as well. I want it to look much more natural than a straight line. Let's wash that off. Dip in again. And down with my stalk. So there we go, really quick, simple lavender. And let's see if this has dried off over here. I'm actually going to take out just where it's pooling. I'm going to go back to my larger brush. So I'm going to give the impression, I'm going to use the colours that I mixed here. Give the impression of some lavender in the background. So as I did with the green strokes, I'm just going to do exactly the same again. I'm just going to give a little flick. And where our paper is still slightly damp. It's spreading really nicely. So I'm going to let that dry off, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to put my detailed lavender in over the top. So now that our background is dry, I'm going to put my lavender onto here. I'm going to use a variety of colours again, just to change it up a little bit so it doesn't look so flat. So we can see here our background's dried off. We've got this kind of impression of a lavender field in the background, nice and subtle. So I'm going to use my medium brush again. I've got mixed up here a dark one. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of a slightly pinky one. I'm going to start off with a lovely bright pink as my base, and then add in a touch of blue. And my pan set actually comes with a really nice purple. I'm just going to use that straight as it is, but I'm also going to add a tiny bit into this pink here. And then I'll just use the purple on its own straight out of my pan. So this is a slightly bluier one. Let's just mix up a little more. You can see I keep washing my brush in between. That's why I want to keep my paints nice and clean and fresh, so I don't dip one colour and then straight into the next. That's a really lovely bluey one. Okay. So this is quite a quick method. So I'm going to try and vary the heights of these as well, and also the angles. I'm going to start off exactly as I did over here, just with my push down, varying up the sizes a little bit on here just to make it look slightly more natural. And then towards the bottom, I'm going to go for my darker purple, because this bit would naturally be in the shade. I can add a little touch in as well while it's still wet, and it will flow. So along to my next one, I keep this a little bit shorter. I put my smaller dots in. So this is just a reminder, so you push your brush down. The harder you push it, the larger your little bit of petal will be. A couple of dark ones right at the bottom here, and then pop that in. So really it's almost mark making rather than this, what you'd imagine traditional painting. We're just using the brush's natural ability and the shape of it to create the impression of these flowers. So I'm using the word impression, so it's kind of an impressionist painting, style painting. It's not a botanical study, but we'll be able to tell that these are definitely lavender. Let's grab a bit of purple straight from my pan. You can see that's already darker because I haven't got much water with it. I'm going to go in a little bit more with my pink here. I'm going to add a little bit more pink in actually. Tiny bit of my purple. So again, just pushing down. It's kind of a straightforward lavender. You can use exactly the same technique for the pretty little sort of French lavenders as well. I'm going to cross these over here. Get those overlapping. This is a really lovely technique, this push down brush, and you can use it for a lot of different things. So you'll see that I use it in quite a few of my videos to create different types of flowers. So I really like those two sort of crossing over. I'm going to do a shorter one now. But of course, when you come to do yours, it might be different. You can position your lavender exactly where you want them. So remember, you want to do this sort of herringbone effect. In with my darker. I think I'm going to pop two more on here. This one's a bit paler, so it looks like it's further away. So the more water you have with your watercolour paint, the paler it becomes. There we go, just have one curving in this way. I've got a little mount to go on here at the end, so I don't know if we'll see all of these, but it will crop down nicely anyway. Okay, let's just drop a little bit of our dark in, and that's the one that's come right out from my pan straight away. I'm going to swap to my little detail brush. Grab a little bit of my sap green. And I'm going to start putting in my stalks. So start at the top. I don't want one solid line. I want it to look natural and like it's got a little bit of curve on it. So I'm just popping that right the way in. Onto my next one. And you'll see that the purple is actually running into this, which I really like because it gives you a very nice effect in the middle. And we'll put the stalks on separately. You do want the paint to dry a little bit more. You don't want that to blend. You do want those to be a nice sharp green colour. So you can see at some point that here it's pooling. I really like that because it gives you such nice variety of colour. Also, it does look like each lavender is at a different stage of growth as well, because some of these I'm going to put some little bit of extra green on just to look like they're just coming out of bud. Leave our last one. So the reason that I put the petals on first and then put the stalk on is because the temptation would be to do a straight line for a stalk and then either side attach the little petals to it, and that looks rather contrived. This actually looks far more natural. So I'm going to get myself some fairly thick green now and then just pop in here and there a few little bits of green. So because we've used 3 different types of purple and we've also got a little bit of green that's flooded in as well, we've got a huge variety of colours. It's amazing, really, just with 4 colours we've worked with. Just look at the variety that we've got. Pop those in and wash that out. Let's put my stalks on. Again with my fine brush. add a little bit more green into here. And there we go. There's our lavender with a wet on wet technique and using that push technique with our brush. So just a little reminder, we've used 3 colours. We've used a lovely bright pink, we've used a purple, and we've used a sap green. We've also added in a tiny little bit of blue. So there we go. I'm going to pop my mount over to choose which one I like best. There we go. Our lavender for beginners. So thanks for joining me. Please give me some feedback in the comments. It'd be great if you could hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this. My Patreon has loads of in-depth, real-time, full-length tutorials, and the link is below if you'd like to consider signing up.